Twitter. At Buck Rising is where you can vote on all of the polls that we put out throughout the course of the morning. Did you make it through the entirety of the Vanderbilt game? Because they did not throw out the first pitch. For whatever reason, they decided on 8:09 as the time that the Vandy game would begin. Not 8:10, not 8:15, but 8:09. A weather delay, yet again, bogging this down. So how far did you make it into the Vanderbilt game, Lucas? Be honest with me.
I passed out right around the 8th inning, probably maybe the 7th inning stretch. Things got hazy there towards the end as I was drifting in and out.
What you mean when Mississippi State was scoring 5 runs in the 7th?
I think I was passing out as they were getting runs across. So hard to stay up that late when it's a blowout too.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I definitely threw in the towel after they went up 13-1. Mississippi State. That was enough for me. The NBA game had already been decided. Giannis, of course, getting knocked out with a knee injury because we can't simply keep one star player in the NBA healthy. So I tried my best with the Vandy boys game, and I made it as far as the 7th when everything – I mean, by then the collapse was already well in effect. They were down 10-1 heading into the bottom of the 7th. And Lucas, if you can grab this for me, because I tweeted it out this morning, what Tony Vitello had to say about why he thought Mississippi State would be in a position to win Game 2 yesterday. I thought that Coach Vitello really gave us some good analysis that played itself out last night. But certainly things were going awry throughout the course of that game early. And we'll get into a lot of this Vandy and Mississippi State stuff from a bunch of different angles, because we went to air right after Candace Story-Lee tweeted out the incident that had happened to Vanderbilt parents that we did not get the opportunity to discuss yesterday. Clinton Yates was at the College World Series. Clinton Yates from ESPN, and he did some good reporting on this. You'll hear from him later on in the show as well. But here was coach of the Vols, Tony Vitello. They're not doing anything right now. He's on the road recruiting. So we figured, why not make him our College World Series analyst? And so I backed him into a prediction, which he came through in flying colors yesterday.
Big a lot of times. And if you're a pitcher still playing college baseball at this point, you're probably pretty good.
Yeah, one would imagine that. I think that's a fair assessment. Good analysis from our guest, Tony Vitello, our College World Series analyst, heading into Game 2 tonight. So what analysts have to do, Coach, is make a prediction. Are you prepared to make your Game 2 prediction? Are you capable of doing this, slights or not?
I am, but anytime, unless it's coming from Vegas, where the true Italians are setting the line,
Yes.
You got to take it with a grain of salt. I'm in the East Division, and I like when SEC teams have success, but I'm going to hope Mississippi State punches back. And it's kind of their style. It's kind of a loud personality group. They're gritty. And maybe they draw something a little bit from getting, not embarrassed, but no one wants to be on that side of the deal in Game 1 of this thing. And maybe they draw a little extra from that, and they're confident in the pen being rested, and they even the thing up. And I think they're two very even teams as well. So I do think there will be a Game 3, and that's great for television and great for college baseball.
Turns out Tony V was spot on.
Prophetic.
Look at you. You were glowing. You are such a Tony V fanboy.
I was smitten. I can't lie.
Smitten even. I mean, one can hardly blame you. The man is hugely charismatic and also apparently good at his job outside of the coaching of actual baseball. In the predictions of baseball, Tony V apparently knows what he's talking about. So it was appreciated to have his insights and analysis on the show yesterday, and ultimately what he predicted came to be so. So now Vanderbilt, we all expect to see Kumar Rocker, of course, on the mound for Game 3. I had posed the question whether Vandy should speed him up a little bit and try and close things out in Game 2. Vitello also said that he would not take that approach. Lucas was echoing the sentiments of his beloved Tony Vitello yesterday as well. This is, I haven't even put you in this position. This is a position you've put yourself in.
Yeah, no, this one I can't fight. I can't argue. I'm okay with it.
Okay, it's totally fair. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved in the conversation. We expect it to be competitive, at least. These two games between these two teams have not been competitive. They have been decided fairly early throughout the course of the games, which, when baseball is going the way that baseball went last night, where the crew on ESPN calling the College World Series last night would not stop hammering the officiating. Would not stop. Kyle Peterson was on the neck of the replay umps because it took so long. It took 2 hours to get through 4 innings of college baseball last night, and that was after a 2-hour delay. It was such a slog to try and keep people engaged. So I'm curious to see how many people actually gutted it out through all 9 innings last night, because I pieced out right at the bottom of the 7th after they started, going up 13-1. Mississippi State, that is. But the expectation for Vanderbilt tonight is to win it all. It should be. Lucas, if you can look up for me what the odds are saying in terms of whether Vandy or Mississippi State is favored. I would imagine that Vanderbilt is favored tonight in Game 3. I haven't looked at the any of the betting lines in my DraftKings Sportsbook app, but I would say to you that Vanderbilt should be favored, that Vanderbilt should be expected to go out there with their ace on the mound and win and become back-to-back College World Series champions, even though, it's not necessarily back-to-back because the last title was won in 2019. You understand what I'm saying? I think that, and by the way, if Vandy is to win the College World Series, I was told that they will be honored at Nashville's 4th of July celebration over the weekend. So, a little extra carrot. Show out a little bit if Vandy is to bring the trophy home.
They are I'm looking at BetMGM, minus 135 on the money line, Mississippi State plus 115.
Okay. I think that's about right. I mean, they would know better than me, so I don't know what expertise I'm lending to the people who are setting the lines in Vegas on this stuff. But it should absolutely be the expectation of the Vandy boys to be able to come through with flying colors in Game 3. They have been inconsistent despite finding themselves in the championship series. I think that's really the only way that I can kind of summarize their postseason performance thus far. Now, we are used to Vanderbilt baseball being a machine, rightfully so. They have shown that ability. Certainly in Game 1 of this series, they were methodical. As Kevin Kugler, who was on the call, by the way, you can hear all of the coverage of the College World Series right here on 104.5 The Zone, assuming that they start on time. I mean, it's going to be here on The Zone regardless of whether they start on time or not. Well, I didn't get a chance to listen to the broadcast because I had it on television yesterday while I was doing the primetime show. What does Kevin Kugler do for 2 hours when there's a rain delay? What do you imagine? What would you do as a play-by-play broadcaster, Lucas, since you have experience in this yourself? What is the longest delay that you've had to basically buy time?
Well, doing high school ball, as I have for the last couple of years, you just push the start of the broadcast back, because a lot of high school broadcasts, majority of broadcasts in general, are not at the level of Titans radio where you can literally have like a 7-hour delay and be live the entire time, giving people great content related to the game that you were there to broadcast.
That happened. That was a thing.
Yes, that
Mike
was
Vrabel's first game in 2018, the longest game since the NFL-AFL merger. Dolphins-Titans.
And Titans radio knocked it out of the park.
And in a way that looked like their season was ending. That was as catastrophic a start to the Mike Vrabel tenure as could have possibly been imagined. Taylor Lewan concussion, Delaney Walker snapped ankle, Marcus Mariota nerve damage. It was a cluster bleep without question. But Vanderbilt, a win away from back-to-back titles. Here's a stat from Dari Noka of the SEC Network that he put out just about a minute ago. Maybe we get Dari on. Is Dari covering the College World Series, or is he just keeping tabs because it's 2 SEC
No,
teams?
I believe he was on site. I might be wrong. I believe he was on site for SEC Network yesterday.
All right, Dari owes me. I did him and Mel Kiper's radio show all throughout the course of the Titans playoff run in 2019. Maybe we see if Dari can stop by later in the week. But what he says at ESPN Dari, Vanderbilt is a win from the title despite hitting just 198 in Omaha and having committed 10 errors. Mississippi State has not committed a single error in this College World Series. 11 of 17 who have won Game 1 in the best of 3 have won it all. However, 4 of the last 5 champs have lost Game 1. So this is from Dari Noka who is in Omaha, as he says, as I sit outside my hotel on a 70-degree sunny Omaha morning. I'm going to start firing out some facts and figures entering tonight's Game 3. So if you want all manner of facts and figures, at ESPN Dari is where you can find him. Does it surprise you at all to hear that Vandy is hitting only 198 in this College World Series? Because that, I guess it shouldn't surprise me because I've been watching all of these games, and this is the thing that we've talked about with Vanderbilt, that it took until Game 1 for them to get the kind of timely hitting that they were lacking. But 198, it just kind of smacks you in the face as being so poor given the kind of consistency that we normally see from Tim Corbin teams. 615-737-1045. John is in Nashville. He wants to talk about the Vandy boys. What's up, John?
Hey, thanks. Appreciate the time. I've been a Vandy fan. I was the one that called yesterday about the college transfer portal.
Sure.
And you did a very good explanation for me, and I appreciate that. I've been a Vandy fan since the early 80s. You sit in the bleachers, the old bleachers, and raining, you could barely see two rows in front of you, and UT just beating our butts, but wouldn't leave. The knock on Vandy is they got to have better facilities. Then they'll attract the best players. Then the people will come. Well, that's BS. They have one of the elite stadiums in baseball. And I'm not trying to compare baseball to football. That's dumb. But to see Mississippi State with 20,000 plus, and the announcers last night said maybe 2,000 would come. What more do you need from Vanderbilt? They got the elite stadium. They got the elite coach. They have the elite player, top 5, top 10 players every year go to the majors. It's just so frustrating. So, we got a new AD director over there, and she's going to make all kinds of changes. Bud, I've been, like I said, this is 33 years, 34 years following these guys. It's not going to change.
Well, John, let me ask you a follow-up. Let me ask you a follow-up if I can. Those aren't accusations that have been lobbed against the baseball team. That's with every other athletic team at Vanderbilt. The baseball team has not come under that kind of scrutiny about facilities and talent.
They did last night, Buck. They did. The announcer last night said, well, there's maybe 2,000 and there's 24,000 of Mississippi State made the trek over.
Oh, okay. I understand what you're saying.
He did. He made that statement, and he was blown away. He said, this is a Mississippi State home game.
Yeah.
So maybe your comments. I appreciate you, Ben. You're doing a great job. Thanks.
Hey, thank you. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. Let's talk about that on the other side. We're also going to get into what Mississippi State fans are reported to have done with racial slurs that they were lobbing at the Vandy parents section. We'll read you a tweet from the athletic director, as John mentioned, Candace Story Lee, and you'll hear some reporting that Clinton Yates of ESPN did in Omaha to that effect. All that and more, as well as your calls, 615-737-1045. Coming up next, I'm Buck Rising. This is 1045 The Zone.
You know what they do? They live Middle Tennessee sports. Lane and Mickey. This afternoon, 1 to 3 on 1045 The Zone.
Man, let me tell you about the fine folks at Two Rivers Ford. They have been doing an exceptional job out there in Mount Juliet. But the question that I would ask you, or that you are asking me, is what's new at Two Rivers Ford these days? Well, a lot, actually. If you haven't been following Ford lately, they've introduced some amazing vehicles. The all-new 2021 F-150 with a power onboard generator. The 2022 all-electric F-150 Lightning. They've got the Ford Maverick pickup, the all-electric Mustang Mach-E, and of course, my personal favorite, the 2021 Ford Bronco. When it comes to technology, Ford is cutting edge. For example, the Ford Pass app syncs with your vehicle, lets you start your car from your phone, and alerts when you need service. The new Fords are loaded with technology. But honestly, what makes Two Rivers Ford the best Ford dealer around is what isn't new. That's the fact that they've been giving their customers the same honest upfront pricing and unparalleled buying experience since 1983. So if you're in the market for a vehicle, contact one of the non-commissioned salespeople at Two Rivers Ford and see what Ford has to offer. Two Rivers Ford, powered by Ford, driven by people.
Thanks for calling 1-800-GOT-JUNK. This is Sarah. How can I help?
there. What is the population of Starkville, Mississippi? Because the idea that there's 24 or what did John say, 22,000 Mississippi State fans in attendance yesterday at the stadium. What is the population of Starkville? Because I have to imagine it's not much bigger than that.
Probably however many students and faculty there are at Mississippi State would be the population.
Like what this is the thing that always cracks me up.
Wikipedia says almost 24,000, which would be about.
So it's straight up the population of the town.
Straight up Mississippi State University.
Okay, yeah. That's unbelievable. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. I've just now logged into the Zone TV chat where you can send us messages via Twitter, Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitch. Apparently, something has happened. Lucas, Zach Bunch is asking you got the cheese? I don't know what that means.
That starts on Monday, Zach.
What do you mean, the cheese? What do you mean Monday?
All right, well, when Switzerland and France were playing, and I was emphatically rooting for Switzerland to knock off the tournament favorites, I tweeted that if Switzerland wins, I will become a Swiss citizen and eat Swiss cheese every day for the rest of my life. So Mickey Ryan is holding me to that. And for all of next week, Monday through Friday, he's making me eat Sargento Swiss cheese during Blaine and Mickey every day for next week.
Ugh.
So our listeners are holding me to that.
You're going to be constipated.
Yeah, I know. I did this to myself. But it was worth seeing France go out of the tournament.
By the way, it's coming home. I don't know if you heard.
Definitely not.
Tomahawk Chop 22 says, what is with the soccer talk? I thought this was a sports show. Man, shut up. Wait, how lame is that? I'm so tired of that person.
No one cares about soccer except the entire world.
I'm not even a diehard soccer fan, but like it's like people telling me that NASCAR's not a sport. No, okay, you go do it. Go get him, Tiger. How stupid. Unbelievable. And I love Tomahawk Chop because he's in here on a regular basis, but let's not get all bent out of shape about soccer's not a sport. What?
That was pretty good. I don't know who you sounded like there, but that was good.
Well, see, I'm trying to figure out my voice. And by the way, we're going to get into the Vandy Mississippi State thing here in a second. But I'm not good at impressions. Some people who do this for a living are good at impressions. I'm not good at impressions. So when I try and like use what I think listeners sound like in my head and project them into the microphone, often it comes off like I'm trying to be too hillbilly, which is not something that I want to do because that's an unfair characterization of the people, the largely intelligent audience that we have listening to us on a day-to-day basis on 104.5 The Zone. So I think that is the voice of my mentions. Soccer's not a real sport.
Yeah, the soccer.
You know who it sounds like? It sounds like our
big voice guy,
our vomiting voice guy.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were doing an impression of.
Yeah, not
but
quite.
The soccer's not a sport. Nobody cares about soccer guy is just factually inaccurate when literally the entire world cares about soccer. Tomahawk Chop also says I drive every day. Does that make me an athlete?
Yeah, so does Michael Otto on YouTube. Man, you guys are the worst.
Really going at the NASCAR crowd.
615-737-1045. I wanted to go. I had FOMO. That I missed out on the NASCAR race at the Nashville Speedway a couple of weekends ago, but I digress. So, with the comment that the caller John made a little while ago regarding Vanderbilt and what was being said about Vanderbilt, the fan attendance on the broadcast, and the idea that 24,000 people were in the stands from Mississippi State yesterday as opposed to, about 2,000 for Vandy. And so apparently I didn't hear this as a part of the ESPN broadcast last night, but John was saying that the commentators were talking about, what's it going to take for Vanderbilt to be able to turn up more for sporting events, even the sporting event that they consistently win on a regular basis. Vanderbilt athletics' claim to fame is what? Women's bowling and college baseball, right? Those are the two. Now they have had moments of success in basketball as well. I'm not totally discounting the entire history of Vanderbilt athletics, but the two, when it comes to bread and butter for Vandy, baseball, women's bowling. We know this to be so here locally. If you want to get involved with the conversation, 615-737-1045. But from the standpoint of what's it going to take to get Vandy fans more engaged, which is, and I have a great amount of respect for Carl Ravitch and everybody else, Eduardo Perez, that was on as a part of the broadcast last night for the College World Series. Those are respected members of the media industry, and especially in the world of baseball. But like that to me is almost a way for people who don't regularly talk about Vandy to talk about Vandy, is to talk about their lack of engagement as a fan base. And to that end, Lucas said this to me during the commercial break. Vandy fans are just a different breed. Like they're difficult to figure out typically. And I'm not here to speak for the Vandy fans because obviously we've already had Vandy fans calling in this morning. But they are difficult to kind of nail down as what exactly they are as a fan base. Other than there's just the size-wise, there's not a whole bunch of them. 615-737-1045. So when the commentators last night are talking about, what's it going to take? Tim Corbin, elite coach, Vanderbilt baseball elite program. What's it going to take to see more Vanderbilt fans out there? I don't care how many Vandy fans show up to the College World Series. I care about the success of the team on the field. And I think that's the way that the Vanderbilt fans are looking at it, or at least that's the way that the rest of the sporting world is looking at it. Not to make a storyline, an additional storyline out of perceived lack of engagement by Vanderbilt baseball fans, but that's just a way for the commentators to be able to talk about the team.
Like you said, it's not that they're not engaged. It's just there's not that many of them. There's the Jim Wyatts of the world, who is as engaged as any Vanderbilt fan you will ever meet, are few and far between.
Jimmy's out there, by the way, isn't
he?
He's in Omaha.
Sure. Yep.
We should have made him. It should have been Tony Vitello and Jim Wyatt, our College World Series analysts. That's how we like to do things around here. 615-737-1045. Lucas, you tell me, do I start with Wayne or do I start with Blake? Because Blake is on topic. Wayne is clearly not.
We'll start with Blake.
615-737-1045. Blake is in Franklin. Let's talk about Vandy. What's up, Blake?
Hey, Blake. How you guys doing?
Well, I'm not Blake. You're Blake, aren't you?
Yeah. I said this, Blake. I've been going to Vandy sports since 1960. I also graduated from UT, and the biggest difference I see in terms of the fan base stuff is state schools have so many people, like 30,000 on campus. Same thing at Mississippi State. And if you're a Mississippi State fan, where do you come from? Most likely Mississippi.
Yes.
And if you're a Vanderbilt student, where do you come from? It could be anywhere. There's not that many people who what they got 6,000 something students on campus,
Correct.
And so and they're from everywhere else. So they don't have the base. And then the thing they did wrong for decades is they didn't have chancellors who were invested in sports. So it was a lot of mediocrity. Now there are other good teams there. The women's tennis team won the national championship. The women's soccer team won the SEC tournament last year, dominated it. But those are really not revenue sports. You don't get all that many fans to those kind of events.
Correct.
Vanderbilt baseball was kind of nothing until Corbin came, and now it's probably arguably the premier program in the nation. But we see 7,000 maybe, something like that, 7,500, I don't know. But you go to Mississippi State or South Carolina or anywhere else that's successful, LSU, they see 3-4 times that many, and then they're the school for that state, and it's gonna take a lot to build a big base of Vandy fans, and it's going to start with winning. They've got to be competitive, and football for the last few years has really struggled. So they're going, that's a big hill to climb in the SEC.
No, thank you for the call, Blake. Thank you. 615-737-1045. Here's what I don't want to do today. Okay, I don't want to turn a conversation about a team in a championship series into an indictment or a conversation about Vandy fans or lack thereof. That's really not what I'm interested in doing today, and that's what this has kind of devolved into. So I want to change course because there's an interesting storyline that came out of game one that I think has been really under-discussed. I don't know how many people on the Zone have been talking about this or locally have been talking about this. I know the television stations picked up on what happened yesterday. I saw the Tennessean wrote or aggregated an article about what Clinton Yates had to say doing some reporting on the ground with interactions between Vanderbilt parents and Mississippi State fans after things kind of spiraled in game one. So we'll get into that, and we'll read you a tweet from Candace Story Lee here in just a second. But Wayne has been waiting patiently, and this is going to throw us completely off topic. What's up, Wayne?
Hey, guys. Man, yeah, I'm sorry not to talk about baseball right now in
You're
Vandy.
forgiven.
I'm
It's
from
okay.
Nashville. Go Vandy boys. But, man, whatever voice that was you said when, like, you did your thing, that sounded like a little bit like Daniel DayLewis, my man. You have some depth. You have some depth, and I love it. So, yeah, you're surprising me sometimes with the impersonations. All right, man, you have a good day.
Thank you, Wayne.
Daniel DayLewis.
615. I'll take that over Andrew Luck.
Daniel DayLewis, that's good.
615-737-1045. So
I'm an oil man.
Daniel DayLewis but Daniel DayLewis is one of these acting snobs, right? Like he only takes certain roles like every 7 years. My left foot, he's only walking on his left foot like everywhere, not just when he's on the set or whatever. He's wearing the Abe Lincoln mask, or not mask, but what do you want to call it? Prosthetics and makeup all over the place. He's acting like Abe Lincoln.
He's an artist.
He's an artist. He is a really good actor. There Will Be Blood is probably one of my favorite movies, but I do not think that I possess the range of Daniel Day-Lewis. I am as snobby as Daniel Day-Lewis is reported to have been, so I will take that comparison.
Like I said, just watched Last of the Mohicans on Sunday. Fantastic.
That's a Daniel Day-Lewis joint.
Yep.
All right, I'll have to go check it out. I've got a free weekend this weekend. I'm excited. 615-737-1045. So, let us talk about what happened in Game 1 of this College World Series. So, yesterday, and I missed this tweet before we went on the air. It was at 9, let me see, from Candace Story Lee at 9:03 a.m. yesterday. I am deeply Candace Story Lee, of course, for those of you who are unaware, but the Vandy athletic director. She says, I am deeply troubled that some of our student athlete parents were subjected to racist slurs during Game 1. This is absolutely unacceptable and disgraceful behavior. Such hateful language has no place anywhere in our society. To the family members, she says, who were impacted, please know that you have my full support, and you absolutely have the wholehearted support of not only Vanderbilt athletics, but all of Commodore Nation. So, where did this originate from, right? Because I saw this tweet come up, and this was the first that I'd heard of it. We did not hear any commentary from Kevin Kugler about this on doing the radio broadcast. We did not hear this talked about at all on the television broadcast that ESPN has been carrying the last 2 days, and will again carry Game 3 tonight. So then I heard, oh, I'm blanking on his name. Clinton Yates, sorry. I heard Clinton Yates on Paul Feinbaum's show yesterday talking about this because Clinton Yates has covered college baseball. He is in Omaha, and he apparently has a close relationship with a lot of the Vandy parents. Now, for reference, there are 8 African-American players on Vanderbilt's roster. The parents are the aggrieved party in this particular situation, with the aggressors having been a select few, terrible human beings in the Mississippi State fan base. So here was Clinton Yates kind of outlining the situation on Paul Feinbaum's radio show yesterday.
So let me break this down from a couple different standpoints. Now, number one, the way that TD Ameritrade is set up is basically there's a concourse. I mean, it's a pretty basic setup in terms of its layout as a ballpark. Now, because of the nature of what we're talking about here, Vanderbilt has 8 black players. So they got a couple other Latinos on that team. And all of the parents, not just those parents, but parents of everybody on the team, they tend to sit together. They're a tight bunch, their send-offs are tremendous, and so on and so forth. So every game, because I happen to know a couple of them because I cover them, I go down there and I check on them. And Paul, I got to tell you this, half the reason I do that is just to be able to see what these environments are like, because they are very much sort of sticking out. Not just because of the fact that they are Vanderbilt, which, all of your listeners and their thoughts on what their reputation is as far as the SEC concerned aside, but they got stars on that team. There are cameras popping in and out of that section in terms of getting close-up shots, and not all the time. So just quite frankly, as another black person I go check on them regularly. Now, In this game, I went down before the game, and you could tell the environment was hostile. And I don't mean that in any sort of immediately problematic way, but Mississippi State has a lot of people here. You know, they have showed up for this team in a very major way. Fine, that's great. That's what you do. It provides an advantage. Now, of course, that advantage gets washed out when you get a crooked number like that put up in the first inning. And a couple other people who I knew from that team came on down to the stadium to the same seat, and I said, all right, let me go down there and see some more of these people. When I went down there the second time, it was a wildly different environment. I mean, we're hearing a lot of chirping that's on the line of things that, you know, what are you going to call them? Are you going to call them slurs? Are you going to call them offensive? But when you're yelling at parents that their kids should earn their scholarships and you're in the middle of a baseball game, that's just, to me, that is not the kind of thing that you want to hear, especially when you're outnumbered literally and physically. And it's hard to explain this in such a way that makes sense to a lot of people who don't know what they're looking at. But quite frankly, as a black person in America, I looked at that and I was like, this is not the kind of environment that's going to end well. So I keep score during the game. I don't spend a whole lot of time down there. And that was it. The game ends and I walk away. Now, I go to visit a friend of mine at a place, an establishment here locally. I just popped in after the game, as I do every time, because he owns the joint. She owns the joint. And a guy comes in and he says, hey, did you hear about what happened? And I'm like, excuse me? He goes, somebody got thrown out of the stadium because apparently they were throwing racial slurs all over the place around these Vandy parents. And I said, let me guess. And I named the section. He said, how did you know that? And I said, because I know where the Vandy parents were sitting. And so I then proceed to ask around about this, and every single person I asked about it.
So that's Clinton Yates, and he goes on at length. But basically, the Vanderbilt parents, after this is in game one, remember, this is after game one. This is what Candace Story Lee is reacting to on social media yesterday, that racial slurs were lobbed at Vanderbilt parents by Mississippi State fans once the game got out of hand in favor of Vanderbilt. How are we still doing this? What a terrible way to distract from competition on the field. What a terrible thing to take away from the accomplishments of both of these teams, by the way. Like, I'm not making the behavior of a few an indictment of Mississippi State as a whole, because that is easy to do today, but that is not something, one, that is fair or that is an accurate representation of who this Mississippi State team is. The point being that the idea that fans in the stands would feel comfortable lobbing racial slurs at people just because their team is losing 8-2 or whatever the score was at any given point after things kind of broke loose very early on in that game in the first inning. The idea that we're even having to cover this week as a part of what should be a celebration of two teams achieving at the highest levels of their sport. It makes me sad more than anything. It's just disappointing. We'll see if we can't brighten up the proceedings. Dumbest thing in sports on the horizon. This is one of them, by the way. This may be the dumbest thing in sports this week. This kind of behavior. But we'll see if we can't bring up the energy, bring up the not the excitement. You know what I'm trying to say. We'll get to lighter fare coming up next. I'm Buck Rising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Need a Titans fix? Bam! Just ask Alexa to play 104.5 The Zone. Your home for Titans football and the flagship for Titans radio. 104.5 The Zone.
Don't tell this man he sounds like Daniel DayLewis. No. We need Buck focused and non-egotistical today. Lucas, we've done this show since March, basically. We are coming up on what? March, April, May, June. Month number 5 is on the horizon tomorrow. Have we done a day of shows where I have been focused and non-egotistical? Because I don't think that's so.
That would be very off-brand of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. 615-737-1045. Why is John Morant on First Take right now? Does anybody have any idea?
I don't know. It looks like he's promoting something because you have the Promised Land text above him, and then there's the Crackle logo, the streaming service, in the bottom right corner.
All right, well, now I have to look it up. What, Crackle is a streaming service?
Yes.
That doesn't sound real.
That's a real thing.
That's like Quibi that lasted all of like 6 seconds because nobody wanted to watch 20-second like short films or 5-minute short films.
Crackle's been around a while. I used to use Crackle to watch comedians in cars getting coffee when I was in like high school.
Oh, is that where that exists?
I think that it's on Netflix now, but I think it originated on Crackle.
There's just too many damn streaming services. Honestly, I can't keep up.
Too much content.
I think I'm subscribed to all of them, and I don't use but a third of them. And really, the only thing that I am using on a regular basis is HBO, so I can rewatch The Sopranos for the 1100th time.
Promised Land, by the way, is a documentary film documenting the rise of John Morant.
Oh, okay. I'm interested. Yeah, they're showing highlights of it right now on First Take. So in that same vein, the NBA last night, a couple of stories out of the NBA. One with what would we consider Memphis to be local ties because it's in the state?
Yes and no.
I mean, the divisions between Nashville and Memphis are ridiculous. I guess I understand it, but like the way that people take pride in further driving a stake through these two cities cracks me up. But hopefully John Morant can unite us across the divisions that have been created. Anyway, so speaking of Memphis, Penny Hardaway is coming back as the Memphis head coach. He had been rumored to be potentially taking over as the Orlando Magic head coach, which of course would have nostalgic ties given that Penny had had such an exceptional NBA career there. But so he puts a statement. What is this on his Instagram, Lucas? He puts out a statement on his Instagram, and I'll let Penny Hardaway speak in his own words on this first and foremost.
Yo, what's up, everybody, especially the city of Memphis. First and foremost, I want to say I love you guys. I love my hometown. I love my city. Just like I had dreams coming out of college to make it to the NBA, and I achieved those goals. It was a huge goal, huge dream. It happened for me. One day in the future, I would love to coach in the NBA. And wouldn't that be great if it were the Orlando Magic? But today isn't that day. Today I'm here with my players, with the fans, with the city, working hard as I can to try to bring us a national championship, and that's what I set out to do, and that's what I want to do. So for all the fans that have rocked out with us, that have cheered us, that are rocking with us, the wins and losses, cheering us on, fighting for us, and staying loyal, thank you so much. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to be here. I don't want you guys to be afraid that I'm going anywhere. And let's get it done. Let's keep fighting. I'm working hard. My staff is working hard. And we're excited about this year with the 100% capacity coming back to the FedEx Forum. Please fill it out. Fill it up. Come back. Cheer us on. And let's see where it goes. Thanks again. I love you guys. Go Tigers.
So that's Memphis head coach Penny Hardaway. Where the hell, I mean, respectfully, because Penny Hardaway is a legend. Lucas is laughing because he knows what's coming out of my mouth next is not going to be respectful. But respectfully, who the hell wants Penny Hardaway as their coach? I don't even think he's a good coach at Memphis. Now he's going to the NBA or potentially being linked to NBA jobs. What on earth has Penny Hardaway done to warrant any kind of interest from the NBA, much less a college program? This is for obvious reasons. Penny coaching Memphis has great appeal to the fans, to the city, of course. Nobody is denying that. But on the court, Memphis is thoroughly mediocre. Lucas, you were telling me that you have friends who were just incredibly enthused about the idea that Penny Hardaway was going to be the next Memphis head coach once it was announced that he was going to be hired.
Yeah, friends of friends from Memphis that came up one weekend right after he got hired, just talking about they can't wait to go to the Final Four with Penny, citing all of his all his Final Four runs and championships at Memphis East and his AAU programs. Memphis fans saw the Penny Hardaway hire as the hire that would get them back to the top of college basketball. I don't think anybody else outside of Memphis saw it that way. But this is a common thread in the NBA, right? I mean, nowadays, Steve Nash, Chauncey Billups, save for 1 year on the bench next to Tyronn Lue. Now he's qualified to be an NBA head coach. Steve Nash had never had any coaching experience, period.
Tomahawk Chop on Twitch says the same thing as Eddie George and Dion. Now, those two are coaching at historically black colleges that are not Division I.
Yeah, I think that's a different scenario.
I think that's an exponentially different scenario. Now, there's a tradition of winning at TSU. Maybe not in the last, you would say probably 10 years. TSU legitimately competitive at various points in their history, and their history is deep when it comes to the sport of college football. But Memphis has competed in the NCAAs at the Division I level. I look at Eddie and I look at Dion at Jackson State more as mascot isn't the right word, because that takes away the importance that lending their names to these programs has, because I do think it's legitimately important, even if they are not skilled X's and O's or veteran X's and O's coaches. But they do represent something to those universities that is going to help elevate those two universities. Penny has that name recognition with Memphis, but it's not the same thing. Memphis is expected to legitimately compete, was expected to legitimately compete with Penny Hardaway as their head coach. 615-737-1045 is how you weigh in, by the way. Adam in the Borough tweets us and says, how can you say that about Penny? He won an NIT championship. Man, you better stop with this. They got James Wiseman. They were supposed to shoot to the top. They were supposed to go to the Final Four with Penny at the helm, and it was going to be this Memphis love story, Memphis love affair with basketball. And yet all Penny has done is, one and done with James Wiseman, who doesn't look to be a terribly good pro, by the way, and sputter around last year. Now, last year was different. We all understand all of the things that COVID wrought upon each of the individual sports and the people who compete in them. So maybe not a fair sample size. But there has been precious little to indicate that Penny Hardaway, is good at his job, much less being considered for NBA positions. 615-737-1045. Our man Darrington is in Franklin. He's called in this morning. Wants to talk about Memphis. What's up, Darrington?
Well, Buck, I hate to say it, man. As a Nashvilleian all my life, Memphis is not part of Tennessee. We don't claim them folks. We don't like those folks. They can just stay where they are. They're more Arkansas to me than anything. So, and then James Wiseman. Let me tell you how good he is. He's so good, Golden State is ready to trade him for Silky P. Pascal Siakam.
That's what I'm saying.
Penny, I give him, he had a good career in Orlando, and the reason why maybe he's staying in Memphis is because they did not want him in Orlando. You get what you get, and I think Penny may have reached his pinnacle, and I think he should just stay at college. I don't think it'll get any better for him. I don't think he will be able to handle the stressors of the NBA pro life compared to the stressors that he's dealing with at the collegiate level. I think more of these guys need to be developed more before coming into the league.
I think that's spot on. Listen, my college basketball, I'm an NFL reporter. I cover the Tennessee Titans on a day-to-day basis. We do the talk show on all of the local sports that you guys care about. Preds, Vols, Vandy when necessary. I'm even down to talk about Memphis, even though Darrington is claiming that it's more Arkansas than Tennessee, and I'm sure many people echo those sentiments. By the way, it should be noted, because Zach Bunch in the comments on YouTube has reminded me about this. Penny can go home with Larry Brown. I can't believe they've hired him. Larry Brown, Hall of Famer Larry Brown, is being hired as an assistant. So how many years, over under, how many years do we give it before Memphis is under NCAA violations with Larry Brown as an assistant coach?
1 or 2.
Yeah. It's listen, they win while Larry's there, and then everything goes to hell very, very quickly. So we'll see if that makes a difference. I don't know if Penny can't get better. It's so early in his tenure. He's not as a coach. He's been coaching AAU basketball prior to taking over at Memphis, so it's early in his collegiate coaching tenure. But at this point, the interest from Orlando, not knowing how real it was, it just seems completely asinine.
You know where Larry Brown was coaching last?
Not SMU.
It was SMU until 2016, but he spent 2018 in Torino, in Italy.
Oh yeah, so he took the Rick Pitino European route.
Yes,
disgraced in America, go rehab your basketball career in Italy, or in the case of Pitino, Greece, and then return home to be the coach of, where is Pitino coaching now? Liberty.
No, Iona. No, they wouldn't let Pitino in the doors at Liberty, I don't think.
Why? They let you freeze in the doors at Liberty.
That's a good point.
Yeah. 615-737-1045. When we come back, it's time for the dumbest thing in sports this week. Load them up. 615-737-1045. What is the dumbest thing in sports this week? Fortunately for you, there are so many to pick from. You will hear Lucas and mine coming up next. Your calls as well. I'm Buck Rising. This is 1045 The Zone.
From the field to the locker room, with 11 years of NFL experience, Ramon Foster delivers a unique perspective every weekday morning. J. Mart and Ramon, tomorrow morning starting at 6 on 1045 The Zone.
And it's not dumb. It's in fact a great perk. But I have often complained about the weight that I have gained due to COVID. Well, not due to COVID. It's just because I'm lazy. I was lazy during COVID, and I discovered the Uber Eats app and decided that was a much better alternative than grocery shopping, and my physique reflects that. But, I have been actively trying, as Will Compton, who, again, the second week in a row, no Will.
Where are they going on their honeymoon?
He said he was flying to Los Angeles. Will Compton of Bussin' with the Boys normally does every Wednesday with us. He skipped last week to get married. Okay. Skipped this week for a honeymoon. Okay. I don't know if he's going to be back next week or not. I have not yet touched base with him. By the way, Will Compton, as always, not here today, but presented by All American Pest Control, yuckbugs.com. There. But, Will Compton has been my accountability buddy, as he likes to call it. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. So, because we have stated a goal that I have to get under 200 pounds by football season, by training camp, which is coming up very, very quickly. The Titans report on July the 27th, so I have about a month to do that. Now, at last check, I was 225. And I have expedited this process by paying outrageous amounts of money for 2 gyms so that I can try and slim down a little bit. But when I walk into the studio this morning, not only is it hot as hell in here, so maybe that's going to help me sweat it out. I don't know what the hell happened to the air. I know the air conditioning is working in here. And also, there are a million different chairs in here for who? It's just me. We can't, we can have vaccinated guests in the studio, but there's not a single soul who's going to sit in one of these chairs. They are perplexing to me if you can see them behind me on Zone TV. But anyway, so I walk in here. I've done my 5:30 a.m. workout. I'm miserable because of it, but I feel like I've accomplished something today. Until I walk in, and J. Martin Ramon have a relationship with the people at 8th and Roast, so they have provided us yet again with so many breakfast burritos and pastries. How am I supposed to sit in here for 3 hours and not eat a blueberry muffin? It's impossible.
They're delicious, too.
Well, I know, because you ate half of one and then left the other half in the box.
You're welcome.
That's disgusting. Well, yeah, that's going to keep me from eating the muffin, but it bothers me. This is a problem in radio. They just send us just mountains of free food, and it's incumbent upon us to try and manage ourselves, which, of course, I have no self-control. 615-737-1045. So we will do the dumbest thing in sports this week. We have many nominees. Lucas and I will start with ours, and then we will get to yours. Fire away.
Let's be honest. You've already seen something this week that made you say,
"What the is this?"
That's bullshit.
What the hell? Give me some more now.
Something so mind-numbingly idiotic that you just want to get it off your chest.
Dumber than a second coat of paint.
Some idiot. You are really dumb. For real.
It's the dumbest thing in sports this week on the Buck Rising Show.
Thank you, Root. Rhett Bryan will join us tomorrow, by the way, in studio. Maybe we'll make him sit in one of the new chairs. And we will talk about NFL records that have the potential to fall with a 17-game regular season. But in the meantime, 615-737-1045 is how you load them up for the dumbest thing in sports this week. That's how you nominate something that has made you scream. And there have been many things this week. In fact, we started the first hour with people in the Mississippi State fan base hurling racial slurs at Vandy parents. Real nice. 615-737-1045 is the number. So, while Lucas is fielding calls, I will start the proceedings. Because this one, I'm curious to see if the audience is as bothered by this as I am. Because what happened earlier this week, in fact, yesterday, was Scott Bowen has just made a very, very good nominee in the comments on Facebook, but let me not get distracted. So, Chauncey Billups has been named as the new head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers. Now, he starts his press conference by addressing an allegation that came up after he was rehired. It resurfaced last week as he was going through the hiring process with Portland of a 1997 rape allegation. Now, full disclosure, there were no criminal charges brought in the 1997 case, but Chauncey Billups did settle a civil lawsuit filed by the woman. So Chauncey addressed this in his opening statements at his press conference. That's not the dumb part. Let's hear the opening statement first, and then I'll tell you what the dumbest thing in sports is this week.
I just want to, before I even talk about my role, with the team and me being a head coach. I first want to talk about a little bit what Neil talked about, and that's the incident that happened in 1997. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about how every decision that we make could have a profound impact on a person's life. I learned at a very young age as a player, and not only a player, but a young man, a young adult, that every decision has consequences, and that's led to some really, really healthy but tough conversations that I've had to have with my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time in 1997, and my daughters about what actually happened and about what they may have to read about me in the news and in the media. But this experience has shaped my life in so many different ways, my decision-making.
So that's Chauncey Billups talking, and he goes on at some length. Now, that's not dumb, because what Chauncey is doing is being what do you want to call it, proactive in addressing this, because he's right. He has a wife. He has daughters. It would be uncomfortable to read about your father and a rape charge that he was accused of, not a rape allegation. No criminal charges were brought in the 1997 case that Chauncey Billups is referencing. The dumb part is this, though, because he was asked a follow-up by a reporter from The Athletic about, he said it himself, how the 1997 rape allegations shaped him. This was the follow-up question, and this was the response by Portland Trail Blazers PR.
Hi, Jason Quick with The Athletic. You said the 1997 incident shaped you in unbelievable ways. Can you maybe elaborate on that and how it helped shape you?
Jason, we appreciate your question. We've addressed this. It's been asked and answered, so happy to move on to the next question here, Aaron.
Absolute cowardice. I understand that it has been a long time since 1997. I understand that Chauncey was proactive in addressing it off the top. If Chauncey Billups is not capable, or the PR staff has not prepared him adequately to answer a follow-up question, and quite a simple follow-up question, by the way, just asking how it shaped him, not going into details on why he settled the case, despite there being no criminal charges brought, not picking at the actual incident itself, just simply asking a follow-up. Cowards. That legitimately made me so angry yesterday. And it's not Chauncey Billups' fault. He looked like he was prepared to answer the question. The woman who I don't know the name of the PR staffer who got in front of that, who cut the reporter off, or did not cut the reporter off, but cut the question off in order so Chauncey could not give a response to that and just moved along with next question. Maybe she thinks she did her job today. But that is such a lame example of unnecessary protection of somebody who I think should be capable of answering a question about it.
Like, the backlash that they are receiving from this is far worse than anything they would have gotten back from whatever Chauncey Billups' answer would have been, right?
Without question. They made a scene unnecessarily.
Like, what's the PR logic in cutting that off?
That they think Chauncey is going to say something dumb? I don't know. They clearly don't trust him in that way where they would feel the need to make this a bigger story than it otherwise would if you just let the head coach, a 44-year-old grown man, answer the question. We'll come back with yours. Kevin will lead us off. Lucas has a dumbest thing in sports this week, and Scott Bowen in the chat on Facebook has probably brought one of the better ones that I have seen. All that and more coming up next. 615-737-1045 is how you get in. Kevin will lead us off on the other side. I'm Buck Rising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
They have Middle Tennessee sports on their mind 24/7. 3HL with Brent Doherty, Don Davenport, and Ron Slay. This afternoon starting at 3. 104.5 The Zone.
Lucas will have his momentarily, but Kevin has been waiting patiently. He leads us off on this Wednesday. Kevin in Columbia has a nominee for the dumbest thing in sports this week. What's up, Kevin?
I have got the perfect nominee with the going story of being the College World Series. I'm going to go straight for the top. The dumbest thing in sports this week is for North Carolina State, their athletic director, allowing it to fester that somehow Vanderbilt was the reason they got disqualified.
Yes.
That's the dumbest thing in sports. And then for their coach that told the whole world his team was sick to stand there on Sunday night in their stadium and call his team the College World Series champions, that's just dumb.
Thank you.
I'll hang up and listen.
I appreciate that, Kevin. That's a strong one.
I didn't know that.
Oh my God, yes. You have. Well, I mean, why would anybody else? This is why people are asking if there's going to be additional reporting on this with false positives. I mean, that NC State faded into the background as soon as they were, no contested and then eliminated. Yeah, their coach went in and said they're the College World Series champions, and he's 100% correct in the idea that NC State has allowed the narrative that Vanderbilt somehow, some way, had something to do with them being eliminated, fairly or unfairly. NC State, here's why I have such little sympathy for their situation. I'm sympathetic for the kids, okay? That is the extent of my sympathy. I give a damn about the coach, the university, or the rest of the fans. Don't care one iota. I feel bad for the kids. But the lack of accountability by NC State in any regard, as Kevin said, letting it fester, this narrative that Vanderbilt somehow had some kind of involvement. It's not only dumb, it's negligent. Like, honestly, I mean, I guess they're not saying anything outright. They're not outright accusing Vanderbilt, so it's not like defamation or anything like that. But it's damn near. 615-737-1045 is how you nominate the dumbest thing in sports this week. Now, I see one of my favorite callers, Lebowski, is on the line. But Lucas, you have not yet done yours, so I'm not going to put yours off any longer.
Raise your hand if you knew the Tour de France was happening. Oh, you did?
I did. Well, you know why I knew the Tour de France was happening?
Why?
Because some woman held out a sign and knocked over the entirety of the Tour de France on, what was that, Sunday?
That is my dumbest thing in sports this week.
Oh, my God.
A woman had a cardboard sign that in French read basically hello to her grandmother and grandfather and held it out and knocking over a crowd of cyclers and causing a massive pileup at the Tour de France. And they finally arrested her. How did she escape from that situation?
615-737-1045. Here's the thing. She escaped. Like, she tried to flee the country. This woman was straight up a fugitive from the law.
How is there not enough security around the Tour de France? First of all, spectators are right there next to the bike path.
Buddy, you're asking about security. This woman is holding a sign out onto the track.
Giant crowd of cyclers went straight into the sign. It caused a massive pileup. At least one cycler had to retire from the competition due to injuries. There were multiple injuries, and she just scampered away. Allegedly, it was a German woman who has officially been arrested.
She has now been arrested, but she straight up fled the country first. The giant
fled the country. She just scampered off after causing a giant pileup.
It's one of my favorite stories. It is also mind-numbingly dumb.
And the sign was just written on like a little hunk of cardboard. She just stepped out in front of the camera and held out in front as the cyclers come barreling down.
Like a 75 bike pileup.
Oh, it was so bad. But the dumbest thing is that she was able to run away and everybody's left looking around like, where'd she go?
How is there not some kind of... No, the dumbest thing is on the Tour de France, because how is there not some kind of barrier between the fans and the track?
There's none. They're right on the track.
They're straight up on the track.
Yeah, and basically the response to it was like, please don't do this. And how is there not like security around there? Okay, if you're going to let the fans stand there, fine.
Oh, my God.
But there's no security or last line of defense to capture people that do things like this with such easy access to the bikers. It's insane she was able to just walk away and get out of the country before finally being arrested.
You know, for being such advanced human beings, or being such an advanced species as human beings are, we are unceasingly stupid sometimes. 6-1, which, gives us great content. 615-737-1045 1045. Now, I know this man is going to bring it strong. It's Lebowski from Football and Other F Words. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast right now. Lebowski, the floor is yours.
Could you imagine if F1 just allowed people to be right next to the track, or if NASA just allowed people to throw up a lawn chair right underneath the engines as the space shuttle's taking off? Oh, my God, how did this happen? No, I'm sorry, let me get to my actual dumbest thing.
Yeah.
And it goes to Senator Tommy Tuberville, a phrase that I still can't believe I'm saying, told Stephen Dennis of Bloomberg this week, speaking about NCAA players and the name, image, likeness thing. He's worried that players might be enticed to go to bigger schools where they can make more money. This is coming from a guy in 2012 who walked out of the middle of a dinner with Texas Tech recruits to take a job at Cincinnati without even telling them bye. He left literally every job he had, was not fired, to take more money every single place he went. I don't want to hear anything else from this man. Shut all the way the hell up, Tommy Tuberville.
Rack 'em. 615-737-1045. Thank you, Lebowski. Yeah, that's a headline this week. NIL, by the way, the state of Tennessee and 5 other states will officially have the name, image, and likeness legislation go into effect. By the way, there was a tweet that I saw. Hopefully I did not scroll past it, about what is happening with NIL. And I think it's Minnesota where, here it is. David Ubben quote tweeted it. All collegiate it's Nebraska rather. All collegiate student athletes in Nebraska will officially have at least one business offer when they can begin profiting from their name, image, and likeness. And it's coming from Runza. So Runza is apparently a chain restaurant in Nebraska, and they are just putting it out for all collegiate athletes in the state that they have an endorsement opportunity from Runza, which is, honestly, I would be surprised if we don't see more larger brands do this with Coca-Cola or McDonald's or, Ford or Chevy or whatever. But yeah, go back to Tommy Tuberville. Lebowski is right. The idea that we are talking about Senator Tommy Tuberville is, again, a testament to the stupidity.
A man who does not know what the 3 branches of government are. I will remind people.
God, I just so it kind of falls in line. And listen, elections are free and are meant to be fair. They are the decisions of the people. So I will not criticize our free and fair electoral process. If people in Alabama want Tommy Tuberville to be their senatorial representation, Godspeed. Because this is the kind of stuff that you're going to get. Just straight up. Like whatever problems you have, I can't solve them. Okay? Regardless of political affiliation. It's not about political affiliation. It's just that he appears to not know what the hell the United States government is.
So nothing to do with political statements.
No, nothing at all. That's a Republican, Democrat, anywhere in between. He's just not qualified. Okay? So there's that on the front end. And then he gets into the name, image, and likeness stuff because, of course, Tommy's going to stick his nose into this and come up looking like a bleep hole. All right? Because from what Lebowski has pointed out, just the idea that he left the dinner to go take another job at Cincinnati, straight up in the middle of a boosters dinner, that college coaches who have profited off the backs of teenage labor, free teenage labor, since the inception, basically, of collegiate sports, that somebody would feel comfortable, somebody who has had the career of Tommy Tuberville would feel comfortable as a totally mediocre coach who has made entirely more money than he deserves in his profession, and it has seen him skyrocket up the societal ranks where he is now an elected official of the United States government just because he's a famous football coach. And not even that good of a football coach, just a famous football coach in the state that he represents. That he would feel comfortable criticizing the players for potentially taking advantage of, a free market is probably not the way to put it, but as free a market as could be possibly found that the collegiate athletes are now getting a chance at with the name, image, and likeness legislation. This man is just an ass.
There are plenty of reasons for me to be ashamed of the fact I grew up in the state of Alabama. This one takes the
That's
cake.
A tough one.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I just can't get over the idea that an elected senator doesn't know the three branches of government. What do we have on Twitter, Lucas? 615-737-1045 if you want to nominate the dumbest thing in sports this week. I got a bunch in the chat as well.
Lebowski chipped in on Twitter as well, saying Ryan Tannehill is Matt Schaub.
Oh,
gross.
Darrington called in earlier.
He did.
We did not. That would have been a perfect lead into the dumbest thing in sports.
He had a much better point today.
Today, he was much more coherent in his opinion that Memphis is more Arkansas than it is Tennessee. But yes, he alleged yesterday that Ryan Tannehill was Matt Schaub in career achievements. And that is among the dumbest thing in sports this week.
Goody says Texans fans still believing the Oilers' history and jerseys belong to their franchise.
Yeah, we've covered that ad nauseum, but it is just unceasingly stupid, and people in Houston not fundamentally understanding the rights of ownership and trademarks and patents.
Dart Goof says that Memphis would have been a better city for the Titans that Memphis would have been a better city for the Titans than Nashville would have been.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say.
It was one take from one person on Twitter. He was my ding-dong of the week, Monday on Blaine and Mickey.
My ding-dong of the week. I can't get over that. That's a segment. I love that. So it's so on brand for those two.
Sponsored by Mark Spain Real Estate.
I think that – so I've never been to Memphis. Full disclosure. Never had actually, that's not true. I've been in the Memphis airport, but that's about it. So I don't know what the city of Memphis is like. I only hear wonderful things about Beale Street, the food, and the music, of course. But I cannot imagine that we are by consensus, having been to very other few cities in the state of Tennessee, we are by consensus the best city in the state of Tennessee. Nashville, Tennessee is the best of the best. I'm sorry if you are uncomfortable with the statement that I've just made. I don't think it's an unpopular opinion. I just think it to be fact at this point. So the idea that the best city in the state cannot support an NFL team or cannot properly, see the achievements of the NFL team, the local professional football team maximized, I think is among the dumbest things that I've ever heard. Especially given the way that people in this city gravitate towards large events and how well we do them. The idea that Memphis would be better suited for the Tennessee Titans, just because I believe the person on Twitter who made this ridiculous opinion cited that just, the age-old cliche of there's more Bills fans or there's more Steelers fans in Nissan Stadium than there are Titans fans, which honestly hasn't been the case in quite some time.
Elliot says, isn't the dumbest thing in sports this week obviously the goalkeeper gaffe in the Spain-Croatia game?
Yeah, that was pretty bad. The own goal is a tough scene. And Spain had a couple of own goal issues against England yesterday because, of course,
Germany.
Germany. I was gonna make a coming home joke and I got caught up. 615-737-1045. Scott Bowen may win though. The dumbest. He says this in the chat on Facebook Live for Zone TV. The dumbest thing in sports this week has to be Bucks top quarterbacks under 25. And he didn't know that Josh Allen was 25. Oh, and then he blames Pro Football Reference, which very clearly states that Josh Allen's birthday was in May and that he is, in fact, 25. Not a shining moment for me. By the way, we have a birthday. A very happy 24th birthday to Tennessee Titans wide receiver Arthur Juan Brown.
And happy birthday to him. I don't care. Good luck.
It's not true, Stephen A. I care. Lucas cares. The audience cares. Happy birthday to A.J. Brown. 24 years young. That made me feel very old. The idea that I'm almost 4 years older than A.J. Brown. It's been a difficult transition for me to have to make where professional athletes coming into the league are now substantially younger than me. It's jarring. 615-737-1045. Coming up next, we are going to have, John Michael J. says, wait till you have kids. I do. I have 2 cats. Fur children.
Yeah, I have one.
Trash pandas. What, one kid or one cat?
Cat, kid, same thing.
Why are you having to think about it? What happened there?
Cat and a dog.
You like short-circuited. Anyway, what we are going to talk about coming up next. DeForest Buckner was speaking to the Indianapolis Star the other day. DeForest Buckner, of course, a defensive lineman for the Colts, a star player for the Colts, and one of the reasons why the Colts had, I don't know how they ended the season, but they were among the top defenses in the sport for almost the entirety of 2020. A big reason DeForest Buckner. So DeForest Buckner has made some comments about why it's going to be much more fun to play the Tennessee Titans this year. We'll get into that. You'll hear from DeForest Buckner because he said this on the Indy Star wrote an article about it. He said it on the Rich Eisen show. So you'll hear that coming up next. And also, we are going to have a fun segment with Ted Nguyen of The Athletic. He does film analysis. He is going to go into detail. So if you're ready for a little football overload, Ted Nguyen is going to give it to you as it relates to Julio Jones and the Titans offense. Your calls as well coming up next. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
Inside and outside the locker room, we cover the Titans 24/7. Got it! Your home for Titans football and the flagship for Titans radio. 104.5 The Zone.
that you do with the bands, like around your legs or whatever. Apparently, it's the same kind of stuff that they do in a bar class, which I did one time, and it felt like somebody took a knife to the back of my calf and just split them open for 3 days after the fact. But all I got to do is sit in front of a microphone and talk, and my entire body is just aching today. I feel stupid complaining because what we're going to talk about here is what's happening in the NBA, and what, of course, happened last night with Giannis Antetokounmpo. By the way, Lucas, you have been pronouncing that name in your updates so far today. You are pronouncing Giannis's last name better than you pronounce your own.
Antetokounmpo.
Yeah. That was an upset. I was not. You.
One time I said my name wrong. But one time is too many.
Yeah, well, it's around here. I'm literally never gonna let you forget that. But so Giannis goes down last night. I don't know how many people were watching the NBA Eastern Conference Finals prior to the Vandy boys in Mississippi State because of how delayed the Vanderbilt game was. But, of course, Giannis goes down. He hyperextended his knee and was ruled out for the remainder of the game. Now, the Hawks had it well in hand by the time that Giannis exited, and they ended up winning in pretty comfortable fashion last night. The playoffs have been fun so far. Have been a lot of fun so far. So but to this point, we have seen Trae Young, who obviously did not play last night, Giannis go out. Kawhi Leonard has yet to make an appearance in this Western Conference final. You have Paul George, you have Chris Paul. I don't know how many people consider Devin Booker a star player in the NBA right now, but the story of this postseason has been the rash of injuries to the stars, and I'm struggling with it because I love basketball. I'm as I said earlier, I'm an NFL reporter, but my favorite sport to watch as a fan is basketball. And I am really struggling to get myself invested in these NBA games because they keep taking away names that I recognize and players that I like to watch. If you're experiencing this, and maybe I know many of you aren't watching the NBA, whether it's because you have some kind of principled stance against the NBA like so many people do. I don't care about any of that. I just want to watch basketball. I don't care about LeBron James in China. I really don't. I sure don't. I just want to watch Devin Booker light somebody up for 47 points in a given night, or Paul George question his greatness while putting up 41 in a playoff victory. That's all I want to do with that. But they are starting to lose so many stars in the NBA due to injury that it's legitimately affecting my joy of the game. Lucas, are you paying attention to these playoffs at all? I know you're wrapped up in soccer. I know you've been watching the Stanley Cup Finals a lot more closely. Is it Stanley Cup Final or Finals?
Finals.
Okay.
Yeah, like it's NBA Finals, right?
Right, but I think there's a difference. I think it's the Stanley Cup Final.
Good news to me. I've never looked into that, but I am paying attention to it. Yes, Game 2 is tonight in Tampa with the Lightning, a 1-0 lead. I think the Lightning are going to win in 5. But yeah, I'm paying attention more to the Hawks series just because of what they've been able to do in this postseason. Like, I take every chance I get to watch that series. I watched about a 10-minute stretch yesterday, and thankfully I caught the Clint Capella over the backboard bucket.
Is Giannis a true number one? Is Giannis the LeBron James of his team? Is Giannis the Chris Paul of his team? Because, I mean, Chris Middleton has been exceptional. I think Giannis, a 2-time NBA MVP, most people would consider him as their star player. But what I saw from Milwaukee last night, it obviously affects the competitiveness of the Bucks if Giannis can't play. But I really, sometimes watching him, just because of, I mean, he's a 7-footer who plays like a point guard, but he doesn't shoot like Durant does. Nobody plays the game like Kevin Durant. So when he's not capable of making free throws or shooting from 3 like Durant is, people almost hold it as an indictment of Giannis instead of looking at Durant and be like, why the hell is somebody that size able to play the game the way that they do? But I don't think they're capable, the Bucks, of winning a championship without Giannis.
But when you say, is he like LeBron or like Chris Paul?
Like, is he discernibly the number one on his team?
But and you would know this better than I have not paid as much attention to the Suns. Would Devin Booker not be the number one star for the Suns in this postseason?
Okay, I think statistically, yes. But the Suns, the success has all been derived off of Chris Paul's ability to navigate the offense, to be a legitimate leader at the point guard position, not absorbed with scoring, not absorbed with three-point shooting, but settling for the kind of shots that Chris Paul takes, mid-range, oftentimes, or at the rim, and making sure that he maximizes the abilities of two young, potentially star players in DeAndre Ayton and in Devin Booker. So I would say, yeah, everybody is looking at the numbers that Devin Booker is putting up and saying, yeah, that's the Clippers number, or excuse me, that's the Suns' number one player. But I mean, I think without question, it's Chris Paul for how I mean, look at how much more successful Phoenix is from year over year.
Yeah.
Just by that addition.
Well, I guess we'll find out with the Bucks if Giannis is not available for, I guess, Game 5 would be next.
That's what I'm saying.
Seeing what the Hawks have done without Trae Young, they were in control of that game before Giannis went down.
615-737-1045 is how you get involved. 615-737-1045. I mean, I want to watch basketball. I do. But if Trae Young and Giannis aren't playing, like I'm going to have a hard time. Like I'm going and watching the Western Conference Finals because they have the majority of the star power, because those are the two teams that I think have the ability to overwhelm you at any given point. Maybe Milwaukee with Giannis and Chris Middleton, certainly not Drew Holiday or PJ Tucker. These aren't the kind of players that you're going to an NBA playoff series to watch. But I question whether Giannis is legitimately a number one option on his team. And
we might find out.
That's what I'm saying. I think this is going to be a good sample size of that, because I think he's great. I do think he's great. I just think he might be like the best number two in the NBA. 615-737-1045. Michael is in Goodlettsville. He wants to talk about some hoops. What's up, Michael?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, I'm a huge NBA fan. I probably watch 400 games a year, literally. And I am absolutely loving watching the playoffs this season, because for the first time in a long time, like we had the Warriors for a long time, and last year we kind of felt like the Lakers were going to win. For the first time in a long time, I have no idea what's going to happen. It's so fun. We've had 11 different conference finalists in the last 3 years. And yeah, I mean, we've got these four teams haven't won a championship. If the the Hawks are the most recent, and that was like 1958. Or I guess the Bucks were in 72. But yeah, I mean, it's so much fun. Just a bunch of new teams, new blood, and I'm a Clippers fan, so maybe that influences my perspective. But yeah, I just wanted to say I'm having a ton of fun despite the injuries, just not knowing who's going to win.
Okay. Well, I think that's a fair assessment, Michael. Thank you for the call. 615-737-1045. No, I'm not saying that I don't like the variety of the teams that are in it. I dislike, going with the intention, because this is the best thing on television right now. I mean, the College World Series is obviously the thing that has local ties, the things that we're going to focus on the most, because they have local connections to an audience in Middle Tennessee predominantly. But from the standpoint of what sporting event I want to turn on at any given point, it's been the NBA playoffs. The games have been so much fun, without question. And the variety that you're getting with, I won't call them four new teams, but four teams that are not the Cavs or the Lakers or the Warriors or any of the teams that have been consistently going to the finals in the last 4 or 5 years at this point. I'm down for the variety. I just want more. I want a little more juice.
Yeah, that's what has people like me even remotely invested of what the caller was just talking about, having no idea who's going to win the NBA Finals. I love that. Out of all four teams here, now the Clippers back home, Game 6, back up against the wall. Like, you have no idea what's going to happen. I, in terms of viewing, I'll take the Stanley Cup Finals and the Euros and the Copa America over the NBA. But it's got my attention because of the matchups that we're getting.
Oh, right, because that's the biggest indictment of the NBA. It's like college football that way. You know typically who's going to win, who's the best team, and who's going to advance to the finals. 615-737-1045. Steve is in Nashville. He wants to talk about Giannis. What's up, Steve?
Hey, guys, how you doing? I'm a basketball lifer and an ex-coach, but so I always love when you talk about basketball. But Giannis is a number one. He's a number one guy. He's got some flaws. He's not a LeBron. He's not a Durant. He has some flaws. So he actually needs people around him like a Middleton. Drew Holiday is a good all-around guard, is serviceable, but this is actually the best chance, if he's not hurt that bad, the best chance for them to win a championship would be this year because of the injuries with Kawhi, and you don't know about Trey. But I think Giannis is a number one, but he needs some people around him. Middleton's playing great, but he's just got flaws that are glaring, especially at this time of the year.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Steve.
guys.
We appreciate the call, 615-737-1045. Well, this makes me happy because every time I want to talk about basketball and I'm scared that nobody cares about basketball, we get people calling in wanting to talk basketball. So it makes my heart happy. 615-737-1045. So what the Bucks are calling it a hyperextended left knee for Giannis. And I think, I mean, if all things were normal, I would probably favor the idea of a Bucks-Suns finals in the NBA. I think this has been thrown up because what we did this topic on Monday, Lucas, right? Is it all but decided who's going to play in the NBA finals? And then immediately Giannis hyperextends one knee and everything goes to hell.
Yeah, and the Hawks win without Trae Young, and the Clippers win against the Suns, and they're headed back home. So suddenly that conversation is a different viewpoint.
Paul George, 41 points. We will see what he has in store tonight. I'm low-key rooting for the Suns. All right, when we come back, we talked about the DeForest Buckner comments. You're going to hear those. We'll also get into depth with some get into some film analysis, a deep dive, if you will, with Ted Wynn of The Athletic regarding Julio Jones and this Titans offense. You're not going to want to miss it. It's coming up next. I'm Buck Rising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
J. Martin Ramon. You don't wake up early? Here's what you missed.
What do you expect? Because if it's not what you expect, with the amount of money that's paid out, it's an ever-changing league. The NFL means not for long, not just for the players, or for coaches too.
Jason Martin and Ramon Foster. Tomorrow morning starting at 6 on 104.5 The Zone.
is some Titans conversation before we get to Ted Wynn of The Athletic, who is going to tell us just exactly how the Tennessee Titans would be best served using Julio Jones next year. That was good timing by you. Heady play. 615-737-1045. Let's start with DeForest Buckner. So, he went on, DeForest Buckner, by the way, if you don't know, really good defensive lineman for the Colts. Really good defense that the Colts have. Probably the best thing that the Colts still have available to them because their quarterback stinks. Talking about Carson Wentz. I think they got worse. Topic for another day. But DeForest Buckner went on the Rich Eisen show yesterday and gave some thoughts on why he thinks it's going to be a lot of fun to play the Titans next year.
I really talked to the guys. Guys haven't really been talking about it much, but
okay.
I mean, it was good for them. It was a good addition for them. Julio's a great player. Obviously one of the best, receivers to ever play the game, and kudos to them. They had another weapon on offense. It's going to be fun to watch them throughout the season. Going against them, twice a year is going to be, a lot more fun. The bigger the challenge, the more interesting the game gets, and I love it. I love going against the best, and to be the best, you got to beat the best, and they're one of the best teams in the league right now, and like you said, got to get if I get Tannehill, the ball can't get to Julio, so it's going to be fun.
That's DeForest Buckner, Colts defensive lineman, on the Rich Eisen show yesterday. So because I saw Pro Football Talk initially aggregate this headline and make it seem like DeForest Buckner was creating what they call bulletin board material. Now, this is not, in fact, the case. He's basically praising the Titans and saying to be the best, you have to beat the best.
When's the last time the Titans were part of any conversation in that capacity?
Buddy, I was just, because I did not listen to that audio prior to that. Lucas had prepared it for me, and I was hoping to just have an organic reaction to it. So I'm honestly a little bit taken aback by how complimentary he was of the Titans, because you're spot on. That was the first thing that hit me in the face. When the hell is that? When the hell is anybody in the last 5-10 years talked about the Tennessee Titans that way? To be the best, rather, you have to beat the best. I botched that. To be the best, you have to beat the best. I'm sorry. 615-737-1045. If you can hear this, I'm so sorry. Terrible. But where do they actually stack up, these two teams? Because he's right. The Titans should be the class of the division. There is no disputing this at this point. So much so that even other teams, opposing players for opposing teams in the AFC South, are acknowledging, not just because they won the division last year, but no, they are consequentially better than the other three teams in this division, the Colts included. This is why, and I know Titans fans have been coming to terms with this for a while, where the Colts are perpetually favored to win the AFC South, regardless of what work Tennessee has done to improve themselves in any given offseason. But this year, it made zero sense to me. And this was pre-Julio. I mean, I looked at the Colts and said they got worse at quarterback, not just because I love Phillip Rivers and the faces that he makes that are fuel for my internet meme arsenal. I'm going to miss him, although it seems the work that he's doing as a high school football coach in Alabama is going to continue to provide me with content. I'm very excited about that. But the idea, Alonzo says, Ric Flair just rolled over in his grave and he isn't dead yet, talking about to be the best, you got to beat the best. Woo! Except I botched it. Sorry, Rick. But where the Colts stack up against the Titans, I don't necessarily see how they're really close. Am I wrong about that? Is living in Nashville, because the whole thing is I claim to be, and I am, I think, an objective NFL reporter that covers the Tennessee Titans. And I have lived in a sample size of Tennessee and covering the Titans for 6 years now in a way that probably skews some of my opinions just because I'm not covering the league writ large. That's why I always value when people who aren't in this market provide legitimate insight into the teams that the Titans are playing and into the Titans themselves from their perspective. I think it helps ground me. But this year, more than any other year, I have found myself, am I being a homer about this? Am I so caught up in all of the hype that the Titans have perpetuated, not just with the Julio signing, but even pre-Julio, even just with the additions of Bud Dupree and Danico Autry and how they've retooled the defensive side of the ball? Why am I so pro-Titans this year in a way that any other year I would have smacked myself in the face? But it's just because they're better than everybody else in the AFC South. And I can't understand. I can't find ways to see how everybody else doesn't see that. Maybe hearing people like DeForest Buckner give voice to that will stop perpetuating these Colts are the class of the AFC South when they really haven't been. I mean, not even in the last, a better part of a decade probably isn't unfair, but the Texans have been winning the AFC South more times than the Colts have in recent memory. It's not like this has been the Colts' division to lose. The Colts are perpetually looked at, though, whether it's the Texans or the Titans that are legitimate contenders in this division. The Colts are always favored over them when it comes to preseason odds, divisional odds. Who's going to win the AFC South? So don't look at DeForest Buckner's comments, because that's the way. I don't know how many people actually read the article that the Indy Star did and then went back and listened to the audio, because I think Titans fans saw DeForest Buckner saying, "Yeah, it's going to be real fun to play the Titans this year," as like bulletin board material, as fuel for hate, inner AFC South hate. But that's not what this is. This is an acknowledgement from one of the best players in your division. Like, I don't know, probably top 5 best players in the AFC South. DeForest Buckner acknowledging, yeah, it's not us right now. It's the Titans. They're the team to beat. And for some reason, that caught me by surprise. I did not expect him to be that kind of complimentary. I am so fascinated to see how things play out in Indianapolis this year. Because, and not just because I'm from there, not from Indianapolis, from the state of Indiana, and I know so many Colts fans and how they're kind of talking themselves into Carson Wentz at this point. In fact, I'm going to Garth Brooks with a bunch of Colts fans who are traveling down from Indianapolis because he's doing that Nissan Stadium show. It's the only country concert that I'm willing to go see. The rest of the country genre, largely outside of our buddy like Ryan Hurd and his lovely wife Maren Morris and like Chris Stapleton, shoot the rest of it into the sun. I'm good. I really am.
I would have objections, but
okay,
continue.
give me the objection. Who is the
Virgil
objection?
Simpson, Tyler Childers.
I don't know that I've ever heard. Maybe I have heard one of their songs, but I can't name one.
I'll come back with something.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to Garth Brooks with a bunch of Colts fans later in the year. And for whatever reason, every time we talk, it devolves into sports because that's what I do for a living, and they want to talk about the Colts. And they're like subtly talking themselves into Carson Wentz, which I think is laughable. It's like people talking themselves into Marcus Mariota at the end when there was just clearly nothing left. Maybe there was an explosive run play from time to time. Maybe he was able to get the ball to A.J. Brown on a slant pass where they're going crazy in Atlanta in that game where not Julio, but both Corey Davis and A.J. Brown went off for substantial receiving totals, both scoring touchdowns in that game.
It's really not a bad comparison, Mariota and Wentz.
Yeah, because they're both broken quarterbacks, and I don't get why people don't see that sooner. I get that you're fans of your respective teams and that you're trafficking in as much hope as you are in what is reality. But the reality is that Carson Wentz was the worst starting quarterback in football last year. And not by a small margin. He was terrible. And apparently, he's kind of a pill in the locker room. The way that it led to divisions between the front office in Philadelphia and ultimately Doug Peterson, Super Bowl champion Doug Peterson, who has a statue built to Doug Peterson and Nick Foles outside of the Eagles stadium, said, yeah, I'm enough of this. Enough of this already. I don't need this kind of stress in my life. I'm out. It's like 2 years removed from winning the title. So for Colts fans, and I know we have some Colts fans who live in Nashville and who listen to this station, if you're one of these people talking to yourself into Carson Wentz, it's like if Tommy Tuberville is your state senator. Godspeed. We'll talk about some things that are happening for the Titans, specifically what will happen with the Titans offense, what the best uses of Julio Jones are. Coming up next, Ted Nguyen of The Athletic, one of the best film analysts in the business. We look forward to that conversation, and it's on the on the other side. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
Stream Titans opinion on all your devices. It's the 104.5 The Zone app. Your home for Titans football and the flagship for Titans radio. 104.5 The Zone.
An exceptional breakdown at theathletic.com on how Julio Jones is going to fit into the Titans offense and the effect on Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown. Ted joins us now. What's going on, Ted? Long time no talk.
Yeah, good to talk to you guys again, and thanks for having me on.
No question. So I guess, Ted, where did your mind immediately go when you saw that the Titans had pulled off this trade for Julio before we get into the X's and O's side of things?
Just thinking about the physicality of the two starting wide receivers the Titans have. I mean, the Titans are already a very physical, imposing team, and now they're adding Julio Jones, who is one of the most physical, violent receivers in NFL, to pair with another receiver blanking on his name right now.
A.J. Brown.
A.J. Brown. That's another really physical, imposing wide receiver. So just really, I think, intimidating for opposing secondaries to have to face two guys like that.
So the physicality, the violence is predicated off of one man. And by the way, theathletic.com, well worth your subscription. Ted does great work at making football fans and football media certainly smarter about what it is that we're watching on Sundays because, really, I think largely people don't exactly understand what it is we're watching on any given snap. But well worth your subscription at theathletic.com. So the violence and the physicality is predicated off Derrick Henry. Or at least it's been the trope about the Titans offense that all things run through number 22. So the biggest question I think that people have had, Ted, and I know you went about answering this in your article, but how will this specifically affect Derrick Henry?
Well, I think the Titans they faced the most 8-man boxes in the league last year. And part of that is because they used a lot of multiple tight end personnel packages. So just with Julio Jones in there and the loss of Jonnu Smith, I think they're going to use more 11 personnel. So just using a more 11 personnel, I think they'll see less 8-man boxes. And it's just the threat of Julio Jones being able to go deep will cause secondaries to have to back up and use more sub packages, and that means lighter boxes for Derrick Henry to run through. So I think that'll open up things for him, just because teams have to respect the threat that Julio Jones presents.
So what can they use as precedent? Obviously, we know things. It's basically coined the Julio Jones route, the little flare route that he runs like a wide receiver, much smaller with the footwork, with the precision of somebody who is not Julio Jones's size. We understand various things that Julio Jones does well. What is it about the Titans offense, the personnel, the quarterback, understanding what little we know about Todd Downing as an offensive play caller outside of a small sample size in Oakland a handful of years ago? What are they going to be able to do to maximize this player?
I believe just do what they're doing, but then they're going to add just a deep threat that they haven't had on the other side. I mean, Corey Davis was a good player, but he just isn't the deep threat that Julio Jones is, and it just presents such a quandary for defenses. Do they double A.J. Brown? Do they put 8 guys in a box, or do they have to double both receivers? And that's going to open up things in a run game and open up things for Ferkser, who I think is a pretty underrated route runner underneath. So it just presents defenses with all sorts of questions they have to answer, and I don't know if there's one specific thing that the Titans have to do. I just think they have to do a good job of countering whatever defenses do, and they do have enough talent on that offense where it's a pick your poison type. They present a pick your poison type of scenario to defenses that they have to choose what to take away.
So to that end, Ted Nguyen of The Athletic here with us on 104.5 The Zone. You can follow him on the socials at FB_film analysis. To that end, I think people this offseason have certainly gotten caught up in, after they added Julio Jones, the next question became about tight end, whether they can trade for Zach Ertz, whether they can add O.J. Howard, whether they can somehow get David Njoku from the Browns. But here sits Anthony Ferkser in this offense as the top tight end option, and the everlasting sports talk radio conversation about, can this player be a number one at any given position? It's as generic and as old as time in this industry. But I think we get too caught up in the idea of a number one tight end specifically with this offense? Ferkser, a superior route runner to Jonnu Smith. Jonnu, obviously a more athletic player, a more physically talented player, but for what Anthony Ferkser was asked to do last year, there was no question that he excelled, and certainly the targets that he got were reflective of that. How can Ferkser, if Ferkser is what they have at tight end as a starting tight end in this offense, how does it mean that he can find ways to thrive despite what his limitations are?
Yeah, I think I see that question bouncing around a lot about Ferkser. Can he be a number one tight end? But do you really need a number one tight end when you have two number one wide receivers and an elite back like Derrick Henry? I don't think you need a guy to be a number one tight end. But I think Ferkser is good enough, and like you said, a really good route runner to where he could be a very good complementary weapon to these guys. And he could get open underneath. He could run some routes against man coverage better than Jonnu Smith can. I think he's just a better pure receiver than Jonnu Smith. And just with the attention that A.J. Brown and Julio Jones will get, Ferkser will see opportunities one-on-one underneath. And, I think he can be a really good complement by winning like some third and shorts, third and mediums when those guys are being double teamed. So I don't think you need a number one tight end, and I think Ferkser is plenty good enough to be that complementary guy to those two all-star wide receivers.
So why, Ted, do we get caught up in the idea of a number one tight end when you ask the question, not hypothetically, what's the word I'm looking for? You know what I'm saying. When you ask the question about, and you answer your own question about whether you need a number one tight end when you have two number one wide receivers, why do football fans get so caught up in the idea of that?
I think, when you look at the other outside zone offenses, they typically have a really good tight end like George Kittle. But I mean, if you look around the league, there aren't a lot of great tight ends. There are a handful of guys like Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, and Kittle, but there aren't like a bunch of number one tight ends out there. I think Ferkser is probably one of the better receiving tight ends, and like I said, I think he's plenty talented enough to take advantage of the opportunities that are going to be presented to him because of those two deep threats.
Rhetorical was the word that I was looking for. I'm an idiot. I talk for a living. I couldn't get the word out of my mouth. Ted Nguyen of The Athletic here with us on 104.5 The Zone. So Ted, we're making the transition here in Nashville from Arthur Smith, who has now been regarded as one of the best offensive minds in football, to Todd Downing, as we talked about earlier. We have a sample size of Todd Downing with the Raiders a handful of years ago, of whom you are intimately familiar with, given that you're based out of Oakland. But with Todd Downing, what should – I understand that they're going to try and play to the strength of their personnel as they should, as any good coach should, rather than trying to force whatever Coach X's scheme is on Team Y. But what should they be expecting from a Todd Downing coached offense here in Tennessee?
Yeah, I think the best thing you could hope for is that he learns lessons from his time with Minnesota, from Kubiak and from Stefanski, and with Arthur Smith with the Titans. I hope that he can implement that same type of offense with heavy play action, outside zone, and use some of those concepts that Ryan Tannehill has had so much success with in the last couple of years. In 2017, when he became the Raiders offensive coordinator, he started off okay, but I think things just quickly unraveled. One of my two biggest criticisms of him as the offensive coordinator with the Raiders was he didn't use enough motion and he didn't use enough play action. I remember there was a game where I think he only used one play action the entire game, and obviously that's going to has to be a lot different.
It's like offensive nowadays. One play action play in a game, that's grounds for being fired.
Yeah, exactly. And with this type of offense specifically, you're going to have to call a ton of play action and use a lot of motion, and that's another adjustment I think Todd Downing is going to have to make with the Titans offense. I think last year they didn't have to use as much jet motion because they used so many multiple tight end packages, but now that they're going to use more 11 personnel, they're going to have to use more jet motion. They were one of the lowest jet motion teams as far as outside zone teams. So I think this offense has to kind of look a little more like what the Rams do with their 11 personnel using a lot of motion to kind of account for that extra gap that a tight end would normally bring. So, yeah, I think for Todd Downing, you're going to have to implement what Arthur Smith did, what Stefanski did with their outside zone games, and then put your own stamp on it. So for him, it's just about growing from that first year calling plays and having a full system and understanding how to attack defenses every week.
He's certainly hammering home the point, Todd Downing, certainly hammering the point home with us in his media availabilities that it's not the Todd Downing offense, it's the Tennessee Titans offense. So I think he's trying to get rid of any tropes that may have followed him from Oakland. So when you're looking at the Titans as a whole, Ted Nguyen of The Athletic here with us on 104.5 The Zone, what flaws come to mind with this team? Because I think everybody, at least in Nashville, is incredibly excited about the prospect of Julio Jones. How many actual wins he ends up counting towards, I think, is up for some debate. I think if you're believing in the Titans this year, it's more of a belief in Ryan Tannehill than it is that Julio Jones is going to be able to elevate them substantially. But what flaws do you see with this team right now as currently constructed?
Just looking on paper, it's hard to find a lot of flaws because when you're just looking on paper, it looks like one of the most talented offenses in the NFL. But to be honest, I haven't really looked at the offensive line. So I don't know if the offensive line is returning to full strength and they're going to be able to run the ball like they want to, especially if teams are starting to play more too high. Can their offensive line, account for less usage of multiple tight end packages and still run the ball with physicality and take advantage of those lighter boxes?
They're hopeful that Taylor Lewan returning from a torn ACL can make a bit of a difference that way. Ted Nguyen of The Athletic, kind enough to give us some of his time. You can read him at theathletic.com. All manner of great football content being produced. And if you miss any of it on theathletic.com, you can, of course, follow Ted at FB_film analysis. Ted, man, I appreciate you making us smarter. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Ted Nguyen, kind enough to take some time. Jay Cambra in the chat on Periscope asked me during that segment, what grade did Ferkser get at Tight End University? Did they assign grades at Tight End University? Did they put him in tiers? I know that it was invite only, which I don't think I should be surprised that Ferkser made the cut since it's in Nashville. But I do think that among the names that you saw, now Ted is saying that there's not a ton of great tight ends in the league right now, and it sounds like we're all sleeping substantially on Anthony Ferkser. But, Blaine has been on this from the jump. Blaine Bishop of Blaine and Mickey, of course, that follows directly after this radio show. Blaine has been on this about what Ferkser is and what Ferkser can be and how we are all, myself included, overblowing the need for an additional tight end, even though I should say that I still think they're going to add somebody at that position. Whether he unseats Ferkser from his role as the starting tight end, I don't know that to be so. But I know that they're still heavily evaluating the position, and I'm pretty sure there's another move coming.
And Jim Wyatt echoed that on here as well.
Yeah.
Just a few weeks ago.
And Jimmy, there's only so much Jimmy's allowed to say, but when Jimmy says something like that, you probably should listen.
Yeah.
Given that he's got the most inside of inside tracks.
But what's been the most consistent trait Anthony Ferkser has that people have said was his advantage over Jonnu Smith?
Route running.
Right. So, Ted just talked about it. The things that are going to open up for Anthony Ferkser with Julio Jones in this offense as a polished route runner, secure hands that we saw a lot of times last year. I don't know that you need a really premier tight end in this offense.
So somebody who was at somebody. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is, to be honest with you. Because premier. What defines premier? Because this is a conversation we have about quarterbacks every year. This is is Joe Flacco elite conversation. What do you consider to be premier? Do you consider premier to be, or elite to be, a group of 10 guys? Or do you think it's 2 or 3? Because I think that's really how you have to, it depends on your definition of that term when it comes to sports and various positions that you're looking to quantify that way. But I think Ferkser has the ability to help keep this offense operating at a high rate in the passing game. I don't know that Ferkser, whether he whether he contributes substantially to their ground game or not, I don't know necessarily. It matters. I don't want to completely discount it because that's been the biggest knock on guys like, Jimmy Graham, for example. Jimmy Graham, who's one of the most prolific tight ends that we've seen in the NFL in the last decade. And Jimmy Graham hates run blocking. It's why the Seattle experiment, everybody was hyped up about Jimmy Graham going to the Seahawks and playing with Russell Wilson, and it's fell flat on its face because Pete Carroll likes to run the ball 100 times and then let Russell Wilson throw darts into your end zone desperately at the end of games because they're chasing. So with that specific player and a scheme based on the identity of that football team that the Seahawks like to run, the Jimmy Graham experiment largely failed. Now, he seems to have found a bit of a second life in Chicago, but how can they best utilize this player who does have some very admirable traits to their advantage? But I think what Ted says there is so absolutely spot on. Do you really need a top-tier tight end if you have two number one wide receivers?
Yeah, and maybe premier is not the right word to say because elite, when you think elite tight end, you think George Kittle, Travis Kelce, right? Like you can make arguments here and there, but my opinion, I don't think anybody else really falls into that category. And then there's upper tier guys like Robert Tonyan and then guys that have been linked with the Titans at times with Zach Ertz and O.J. Howard. Those are the type of guys that obviously would make a difference within this offense, but that I don't think you necessarily need for the offense to operate at the level it was last season.
I don't think it's going to be any of them. They had a player. I don't think it's going to be for a trade.
I mean, John Robinson echoed that too. He said it'd be tough to take in a veteran tight end contract right now.
That and the idea you're giving up more draft capital, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, the list of names that are out there are not, you're not going to go crazy about them.
So what kind of move would that be? The kind of move that Jim has talked about and that you've talked about. Like, what kind of move would that be if we're ruling out the idea of a Zach Ertz or an O.J. Howard?
I mean, I'm not reporting this, but like Trey Burton. Right. Trey Burton makes a ton of sense. Trey Burton, who most recently played for the Indianapolis Colts, in fact, caught a touchdown on Kevin Byard's head not that long ago. Trey Burton is one of the options that, at least if I was John Robinson, I would be looking at with substantial scrutiny to say, okay, can this guy help? Now, he's again, we're not talking about somebody who's going to help in the run game. Trey Burton is a receiving tight end first and foremost, and you have one of those in Ferkser. You're just looking to see whether Trey Burton can be a substantial upgrade over, who's on the roster right now, Tommy Hudson or Jared Pinkney.
Yeah, Jeff Swaim is your blocking tight end.
Yeah, Jeff Swaim, who is, I think, also Luke Stalker, who are all just basically human embodiments of a tree trunk. That's what I look at when I see Jeff Swaim and Luke Stalker, former Titans tight end. All right, we'll do the polls when we come back. And, an update. Actually, I have a Colts fan who's in the comments on YouTube chirping at me about how ignorant my Wentz take is. It's laughable. We will discuss coming up next on Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
Titans talk and speculation on your smart speaker. Just ask Alexa to play 104.5 The Zone.
But he's driven back inside the 5, and they fling him to the turf.
Your home for Titans football and the flagship for Titans radio. 104.5 The Zone.
halfway through. 2 more great shows on the horizon for you, without question. Going to have a lot of fun tomorrow. We'll be reacting to a College World Series champion. We'll have Root Bryan in studio. We're going to talk a lot about NFL records that have the potential to be broken in a 17-game regular season. You know, like all-time single-season rusher, single-season passer, sack leaders, all of these things. Because there was a really good article in Athlon Sports NFL Preview that Rhett brought to my attention, so we will discuss that at length tomorrow. But in the meantime, we had a Colts fan come for my neck in the comments on YouTube. Ben Hoover, who says, Buck, your take on Wentz is so ignorant, it's laughable. Hang on, I got to move this paper so I can read it. You focus too much on one bad season he had, talking about last season. You forget how he carried that injury-riddled team and had good stats from 2017 to 2019. So the Eagles, from 2017 to 2019, they won the Super Bowl. Obviously, the 2017 season would have been the 2018 Super Bowl. It was not Wentz that played in the Super Bowl, obviously, because Nick Foles has the statue outside the stadium. Then 9-7, losing in the divisional round in 2018, losing in the wild card round in 2019, both post-Super Bowl seasons, they go 9-7. And then last year, of course, 4-11. So I'm not focused on the stats. I don't care what Carson Wentz's stats looked like. I don't care what year it was that Carson Wentz's stats looked like. I don't box score scout people. I watch the actual games. Now, Ben, I understand what you're saying about statistical success. You know who also often had great statistical success? Blake Bortles. What I watched last year was a broken quarterback. You know where I have seen a broken quarterback before? Right here in Tennessee, quarterbacking the Tennessee Titans. I watched it for about a season and a half with Marcus Mariota at the very end. The things that are wrong with Carson Wentz are not fixable by a coaching change. He has lost not just a fundamental grasp on what it is to play the position. It's kind of like Blaine Gabbert and his footwork, okay? Blaine Gabbert, top 10 pick in the NFL, former Titans backup quarterback, also Super Bowl champion Blaine Gabbert. So let me not knock Blaine too much. But Blaine, his footwork in the pocket would cause him not only to throw inaccurately, but he would basically sack himself with the way that he hesitated in the pocket, the happy feet, okay?
Similar to Mariota sometimes.
Marcus too, but Marcus at the end, right? Because it had devolved to that point. Now, that's one specific trait of Blaine Gabbert that we saw as to why, and there are many other reasons why Blaine Gabbert didn't amount to, the success that you normally associated with a top 10 pick at quarterback. There's a lot of reasons that Marcus Mariota did not amount to a top 2 pick at quarterback in the NFL, though both of those guys still have jobs. The problems with Carson Wentz are not necessarily fixable. He appears to be in his own head. And the problems that are going on in his own head appears to have largely been caused by himself. When he was given favorable treatment in Philadelphia and the entitlement that resulted after the fact, I don't say that from a point of ignorance. My friend Teron Davenport and I have spoken about this at length. Teron, of course, prior to coming to Tennessee as the Titans ESPN reporter, covered the Philadelphia Eagles on their Super Bowl run. He wrote a book about it. Carson Wentz's relationship and the way that things devolved in Philadelphia are of Carson Wentz's own making. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a brat for all intents and purposes in Indianapolis too. But I'm saying you couple that with the idea that fundamentally, as a quarterback, last year he was broken. They got worse at quarterback. And you can continue to talk yourself into Carson Wentz. But you're going to be alone on that one because it couldn't be me. Let's do some polls.
You won't find a quarterback with the stretch Wentz had in 17 to 19 and then the dip he had, not completely due to injury. You will not find an example of a quarterback who bounced back after that year. Again, not because of injury.
No, Lucas has been looking, and we haven't been able to find him.
Been trying hard.
Russian roulette.
Down goes Frazier. down goes Frazier. The polls have closed and the votes have been tallied. It's the segment where bias takes over and nuance goes to die. Now, here's your favorite Buck Rising Show correspondent, Lucas Pan. Make that poll Zika.
Go ahead, bud.
Do the Vandy boys win the national championship tonight? 55% are saying yes. 45% do not believe.
45% I think got shook up by a game that was well out of hand last night. But you had a really good stat. Kumar Rocker, of course, starting for the Vandy boys tonight on the mound. You had a good Rocker stat.
Yeah, and we saw how shaky 17-year-old Christian Little was, not just last night, but in the Stanford game. He's had a rough College World Series. Rocker's back on the bump. This is from Simon Gibbs, used to write for the Vandy Hustler. Kumar Rocker has pitched 3 elimination games in his young career. He's 3-0. Against Duke, 9 innings pitched, 0 hits. Obviously, that was the no-hitter. 19 strikeouts. Against Michigan, 6.1 innings pitched, 3 hits, 11 strikeouts. And against NC State, 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, 11 strikeouts, and 1 walk.
Yeah.
41 to 5 strikeout to walk ratio in those games.
Yeah, analysis. Kumar Rocker, really, really good at baseball.
Did you stay up to watch the entirety of the Vandy baseball game last night? 89% say no.
Yeah, hell no is the more appropriate answer. Like I said, I made it to the 7th, and then when they got 5 runs put on them in the 7th, I gave up. It was not worth the wait to begin with, but it certainly was not worth it by the 7th inning. I passed the hell out.
We've already done dumbest thing in sports. Does Anthony Ferkser need to be a number 1 tight end in the Titans offense? 68% say yes. Titans fans have been consistent with this, at least on this show. They believe in Anthony Ferkser.
There's no reason to not believe in Anthony Ferkser. That's not been the conversation, or at least that's not been the conversation around here, right? Like, I don't think we've had, I mean, maybe that's recency bias. Like, I don't think I have questioned what Ferkser is within this offense, certainly. But I have not denied what he does as a player, what he is most proficient at, and how important he was to this offense for the past couple of years.
Do you expect the Colts to be better or worse next year? 44% expect them to be the same, 41% expect them to be worse, and 15% expect them to be better.
So, I mean, to be better would be to win the division, and I don't think. I mean, there could always be a path forward. We have no idea what kind of injuries lay ahead in the future for any of these teams.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily true. They can be better than they were last year and not win the division.
You're talking about just from a statistical standpoint?
Let's say the Titans go 14-3 with the 17-game season and win the division, and the Colts go 13-4, finish runners-up in the AFC South. The Colts would be better than they were last year if that were the case.
You think the Colts are winning 13 games?
No.
What are we doing here?
I'm just saying, I don't think that's the only qualifier to say if they were better or worse than last season.
Okay.
It's a useless argument.
Thank you for making it. Meanwhile, Ben Hoover is still chirping at me. Are those the polls?
Those are the polls.
All right, very good. Ben Hoover is chirping at me saying, but how can you argue against what Reich has done with every quarterback he has had in Indy? He got the best out of luck. Brissett, when he was thrust in as a starter, and Rivers, who had his worst year in 2019. Man, listen to yourself. Who are you trying to convince? You trying to convince me? You trying to convince yourself?
I think it's the latter.
That's all I'm seeing. Jacoby Brissett stunk. What are we talking about? And Phillip Rivers is the love of my life, and also he was washed. Best out of it. Offensive line helps. The best defense in the sport helps. The Colts are going to suck next year, and I am looking forward to it because I have a lot of obnoxious Colts fans in my life. I have no rooting interest other than that. Blaine and Mickey probably do because Blaine played for the Titans. More insights and analysis coming up next. I'll see you tomorrow.
Coming up today on Blaine and Mickey.
We recap Vandy versus Mississippi State, Game 2. And our buddy, Titans legend, Dr. Smooth, Kevin Dyson, joins us at 1:20.
And we're already looking ahead to 2021 Tennessee football schedule. Dave Matters joins us to talk about the Missouri Tigers.
1 p.m. on